Welcome to Future Role Model, a podcast that praises the unconventional and redefines what it means to be a role model. And today I have got Mr. Steve Rannazzisi. Am I saying it right, Rannazzisi?
It's pronounced Smith. No, you got it right. Yeah,
Rannazzisi.
It's a tough name to say. I get it.
It's an easier name than it looks like it is.
When you hear it, Rannazzisi, you're like, oh, it comes off all right. But when you look at it, it's a lot of consonants, and you see two Z's back to back at the end,
and you're like, what does that do?
People make it Polish right away.
Right. Well, I
like,
dated
a Rannazzisi, and I'm like, no, you added a K.
My first long-term boyfriend was Polish, and his last name was Mazurkiewicz.
Oh, all right.
And it was like 14 letters.
Yep.
And it looked very challenging, and people would always be like, Mazurkiewicz, and I'd be like, no, it's not that hard. People like to make foreign names.
People see consonants and they get nervous. Everyone wants a Smith. You know, nobody wants to be a Smith, but everyone wants to, like, a Smith, a Murphy. You're not going to mess those up.
Hansen. I have Hansen, and that's
pretty easy. But even Hansen, some people are like, it's actually Hansen. And you're like, oh, come on, dude. It's Hansen, bro.
Because it's Danish. It's part Danish. My dad's Danish and Norwegian.
Oh, really?
And my hometown is all like Danish, Norwegian, and German people. And so there was 4 Hansens, but they were all spelt differently. And so people will see, like, even overseas, people would see my name and they'd be like, oh, you're the Danish Hansen. You're Hansen.
Really?
Yeah. And I like they took it as a big deal. They're like, oh, you're Danish, you're not German. Okay.
I did a Persian show once and they thought I was Persian because they thought I was Azizi or something like that. And that's like a big Persian thing. And so they were like giving me so much love. I go, what about my skin texture did you not pick up that I was not Persian?
Are you Irish?
I'm half Irish and half Italian.
Okay.
So
okay.
I mean, I have pale, like, freckly skin. So yeah, that's more of the and I like reddish hair. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Irish Italian. That's a definite thing.
Well, I grew up on Long Island, so it's like everyone there is either Irish, Italian, or Jewish,
or pretending to be one of the 3,
or feeling ostracized because they're not.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, feeling marginalized.
So you grew up in the East Coast, and how long ago did you move West Coast?
I moved in 2001 to the West Coast.
For what purpose originally?
Well, for acting, and I knew I wanted to do stand up.
Yeah.
And so, I moved in November, and then I got a job at the Comedy Store, and I started doing Groundlings because I was like, those are the 2 places I know that funny people were at all the time.
Yep.
And places that I've heard of before via, like, what was that show? Like, they did like an A&E's real thing on the Comedy Store, and I watched it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's where the funny people go. So I'm like, I'll try to go there and see if I can hang with those people. And so that's where I went. I went to the Comedy Store and the Groundling, started taking classes, and off to the races.
Did you start off at door at the Comedy Store? Or
yeah.
Were you bartending or?
No, I was a doorman.
Yep.
Selling tickets, being a doorman, parking cars.
I really wish I would have come and worked at the Comedy Store, honestly, when I first moved to LA. But I had
Unfortunately for you,
it wasn't the right time.
Well, no, it would not have been the right time for you. And here's why. Because it was 2001. And I have to be honest, because it was like the only real path I saw for female comedians there was just to get on stage. You really didn't have a chance to work there because most of the people that worked there all the door guys were door guys. That's why, and then the lock guys were lock guys. And so waitresses were Mitzi just hired waitresses for them
just
at that point.
Girls, yeah.
And not even like to be honest with you, she was always like, she would get pissed off if a really, really like a girl that was getting too much attention came in because she grew up with a comedian husband. And that's how she kind of lost her husband via, knowing that he went on the road and was probably having sex with cute waitresses. So she always kept like what she's like in her mind. And none of them are going to be happy I'm saying this because some of them still work there. But a governor on the height, you know what I'm saying? Like on what the level of hotness of the waitresses would have been.
Sure. Yeah. And it was weird when I first moved here because I was a Second City Chicago girl.
Okay.
So when I first moved here, I had all the Second City people that like Sam Richardson and like all those guys kind of took me under their wing and showed me where to go and hang out.
Mm-hmm.
In Comedy Store, I had a show there for like 3 years. Back when Dean Gelber used to run.
Yeah.
And, the old school gang was there.
I mean, those days are very familiar when no one was there.
No, but I know.
There was no, by no one, I mean no audience members. Like The Comedy Store
For
now
real.
is an anomaly where truly the only thing I've seen in the last 5 years truly put a dent in the audience size every single night. I'm talking Tuesday nights, they're selling 1,000 tickets a night because 400 seats in the main room sold out, 200 seats in the OR sold out, and multiple shows in the belly room on a Tuesday night. Multiple. The only thing I've seen put a dent in it, Game of Thrones. The last 8 Sundays have been somewhat not great.
That's so funny you
whoa,
say that.
where is everyone? Kind of. That's the playoff. Like in the years you were talking about, the Gelber years.
Yep.
The Lakers, remember those? That's when the Kobe had those runs where in the entire from May 15th to June, end of June, we wouldn't have shows. We would have to cancel nights. Because nobody would show up. We'd have 100 people on the patio watching the game.
Yep.
At the bar.
Oh,
but nobody would be in the room. No one would give a shit about what I had to say. Kobe Bryant's playing basketball, and they're going to win a 3rd championship.
Yep.
That, you know?
And I remember hanging at the OR when, because this was after I had just become friends with Justin Martindale. And so he would be in the OR. And so I had my belly room show on Saturdays. So I'd go up there and it was called Deep Dish Saturdays, and I would have like Chicago transfers come and perform on there.
Okay.
And I did really well. I mean, it was news to me about the bringer shows and stuff. People, you know, I wasn't familiar with that. There wasn't that in Chicago.
That's all I did in New York before I moved here. Was bringer shows. We had to bring audience members.
Yep, and it was such a new thing to me moving here because I was like, of course I'm going to tell people to come because it's my fucking show.
Yeah.
But like, I didn't know that bringers was a thing, and so. Yeah, I would hang out in the OR and there'd be like 3 people and I'd be like, Justin Martin, to me, he was already like a famous comic in LA when we first became friends. I was like, he's such a big deal. Why
Justin.
isn't
Yeah.
But that's what him and I even joke about him. Like it took from that point, it took him another like decade to like really, start to get the things that he was already working towards back then.
Sure, being a writer and, and making a living in comedy.
Yeah, which is just, it's fascinating to even backtrack for me that I've been doing stand-up for almost 10 years and I'm like, holy fuck, yeah, now I can actually headline.
Yeah.
But
it's not necessarily just, getting enough. Look, there's a lot of elements to go into it. It's being able to put bodies in the room for the most part.
Yeah.
That's
the hardest part.
It's the hardest part, but it's also, if you can do it, it's the quickest part to get to do it. But if you're not ready, then it doesn't make any difference in the world.
Yep.
Because you may get them once, but they'll probably not come back.
Well, and I think that's the mistake a lot of people make.
It all comes together, hopefully, for what you're building at the right time.
Exactly. Yeah, and there was something really nice about and we'll talk about the Europe stuff coming up, but me and Rachel being overseas together, both of us being able to do 45 was just nice because, if we had an extra opener that wanted to come in or somebody local that was really excited about being on our show, like we could always whittle down our time if we needed to. But we would have not been able to pull off Europe the way we had talked about even maybe a year ago if we had tried.
Yeah.
So
by the way, I can't pull off Europe. No, I'm not kidding. I know.
It was fucking hard. I'm not going to lie. It was so hard. Like selling tickets overseas is not easy.
No, I have friends. Comedian friends who I started with and grew up with who, I have, I had a blue check next to my name, but they were selling more tickets in Europe because they went to Edinburgh for 5 years in a row.
That's the money shot.
And built a relationship with comedians and promoters and stuff over there. And then started to build, just people coming over there. And so they could go and do a European tour. And I'm not talking about they're not doing theaters, but they're doing 200-seat clubs and theaters and rock clubs and places like that and comedy clubs. And they're bouncing from city. And it's truly a European tour, kind of like what you did.
Yep.
But without, being on a show for 7 years or Netflix specials up until that point, So podcasts help a lot, obviously.
Podcasts help. And also what we learned, and this is probably the best piece of advice, because social media matters to an extent. You can for sure sell tickets that way, the swipe up, all that shit. But it doesn't really matter if you're going to a new market.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter as much, I should say. we found that grassroots was the best way. Like, I know a lot of people that I hadn't seen in like 10 years that live in Europe or have friends overseas. They'd be like, oh, you're going overseas, you should talk to my cousin. So we'd end up hanging out with a friend's cousin, and they would take us to meet all their friends, and all their friends would tell their friends to come to the show. Like, the grassroots way was really the way to go.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had way more luck through actual personal connections than we did through randoms. We had maybe like 5% of any of our sales were randoms. All the rest were like friends of friends or people that suggested somebody come and catch us while we were in town. So it's really interesting how it works over there too, because they're like, oh, you're an American, whatever. And then until they trust you and see you on stage, and they're like, oh, cool, I'll come see you again.
And I even feel that, I mean, I don't know how you felt about it. I'm just specifically, I've been picking people's brains about the audiences in Edinburgh. They're not necessarily wowed by American comedian. It's not like I feel like American audiences, right? So we're all at the Comedy Store, and then an Australian guy gets up there. The first minute, you're just like, wow, that's like such a fucking great accent. You know, you're like, that's how Americans mostly feel. Exactly. And I'm not talking about us. I'm talking like audiences, right? You're like, wow. Like, they give him like a minute and a half of like, that's so fucking cool that he's Australian. Yeah. Like, whereas our voices over there, I feel, and I've been told, do not resonate the same way. They're just like, all right, go on.
We sound like trash. No,
you had a couple great years, so let's hear about it. Come on. You know, like.
I found like the best thing I've found to do is always open with some sort of local anecdote within each of the cities that we went to. We'd talk about the city that we just came from. Okay. And kind of like make fun of the last city in a way, because in Europe, every city, it's just like New York and LA vibes, where every city's like, oh, we're so much cooler than that city. Yeah. Because everything's so close together. So I don't know. You just kind of have to roll with it. But there was.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, please.
I'm interested because I'm going over I'm doing a one-man show.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily stand-up. I'm going out like I've got like, look, it's in my mind, beat it out, and I'm going to run it sometimes beforehand on the down low, but like it's got like a definitive first couple lines and obviously a path, but whereas, like, for me, stand-up, what you're talking about is, like, I would like to go out there and start a stand-up set with some sort of anecdotal thing about the last city or connecting like that. That's what I'm used to. I would normally do that. But I feel like for what I'm going to do,
you can't.
I'm going to do it right. Like, I just got to cut right to it and start it right there and just hope that they're going to be on my side. But I know also that throughout the festival, because you do it for a whole month, you get to do other people's shows. So there'll be times where I'm actually going to go do stand-up, actual what I consider like the different, like me doing stand-up. And then that's where I feel like I'll be able to, some way connect with the audience to be like, whether it's a story or this is what's going on with me or whatever it is.
Yeah. And this is your first time doing the Fringe, the Edinburgh Fest.
Yes.
Not the Fringe, the regular
I'm doing the
fest.
free festival, Fringe Fest. I don't know what I'm doing. To be honest, I don't know.
I don't know. There's so many parts of it. There's like the fest, the Fringe, it's all one big
I'll tell you what I'm doing and you tell me what I'm doing, okay? I wrote a story that I did for my buddy Ari Shafir's Storyteller show. Yeah. And so it went really, really well, and it opened up a lot of doors for me, and it helped me out a lot. It was about me lying about 9/11. And so what I did was it happened right around the time that the deadlines were all coming up. And he goes, look, gotta just do it. Here's and he just handed me a promoter, handed me knew I wouldn't do it on my own, or I would have found a way to I didn't get that in by this time, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah, he's like, this is what you have to make this into a thing. And so really helped me, push me. And so I ended up getting into all these things. I'm in a venue that's way too big for what I wanted, but it's at a time that I think is really great. And also it's not going to feel, it's the cave, so it's actually underground. It's not daylight, nighttime. It's like a bunker, so it's not going to matter. Right. It's got a good time where people are not going to be hammered 4:30 in the afternoon. But it's 150 seats.
That's a great size.
I wanted 30. I wanted 30 seats. I wanted something that I can
really intimate.
Yes, I wanted something that people were like, it just super, super intimate. And I feel like I can still get that with what I'm going to do, but it's not so I don't know. I'm doing it. I'm not getting paid. I'm literally passing a hat around at the end
That's what they said is the best way to do it.
So
Honestly, they did.
He got me a flat with 3 other comedians that I've never, don't know. There are other comedians from different parts of the world. He goes, don't stay with people that you know. Stay with these guys. I found these guys.
I love that
he's a great traveler. But he's like, this is what for what you want to do. I've kind of done a similar version of this before. Mm-hmm. This is the way I found. And look, this is the path I can lead you and help you out with. And so he's been a great help. But that's whatever festival that is. When I hear free, I go, mine's free because I'm doing it. You don't have to pay.
Yeah.
You can reserve tickets and stuff. But you don't have. There's no money. Just whatever you want to pay at the end.
And did you hire and connect with a promoter?
Yes. Just the Tonic is good at the promote for me. And so I've heard they're great. And
yeah. I mean, I plan to do 2020.
Okay.
So I'm curious to hear about your experience after you're done. I mean, everybody that I've talked to says it's life-changing.
It fucking sucked.
Scotland is it's pretty interesting. We were only in Scotland for 3 days on this tour, but they are very spoiled by this festival.
What do you mean?
They're spoiled by it because they get to see so much.
They don't come out to anything.
Well, the one day we were
if
playing,
you were good, you'd be here. I don't know.
The one day we were playing in Edinburgh. Oh my god, the accent's so fucking hard.
If she was good, she'd be here during the festival. I don't know what that was.
I don't know either, but it was close. It was close. The weekend that we were there, which we did not know was a thing, Easter weekend is like a massive fuck-off holiday for everybody in Scotland.
Are they Catholics?
I have no idea what anybody is. They were just wasted the entire week. It was like Mardi Gras for them.
Yeah.
And so we were like dumbfounded. We were like, everybody's just shit-faced, starting at Inverness, and then we came down to Edinburgh, and we were like... And it was 75 degrees and everybody was like, oh, we're not going to go to we had to push our show back like 2.5 hours because everyone was out enjoying the sun. And people were literally like, we won't come until like the sun is gone.
Well, I mean, if you got to see it for 6 hours a year too, you'd probably be like, look.
For real. And so we were like, all right.
Tell Mr. McCartney he can wait a half hour.
We asked the club, we were like, can we push? And they were, because the club that we played was right in the center of like everything. And they were like, yeah, we'll just push it. We'll just change the sign. And we were like, cool.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so we just pushed like 2.5 hours.
And how were the crowds? Were they wasted or were they
wasted
attentive?
But fun? Like Scots are just really they're cool. They're reactive. I don't know how to. We didn't have a bad crowd anywhere, to be honest. Everybody was really intrigued by everything. It seems like Europeans really enjoy storytellers, and especially if you're coming with a perspective, because you're coming in kind of making fun of yourself. Well, I don't know what your show is going to be, but you're coming in talking about something really personal for you that you did involving the U.S.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a really great way to market what you're going to do to Scots in particular.
Yes. Well, the reason I like the platform of doing it every night is awesome. You don't get to do that everywhere else.
Yeah.
But then also like the sting of, I feel like the sting of 9/11 isn't as bad over there.
Right.
But there is an element of interesting, like, oh, they obviously know about it and they obviously, felt so. To them, they can kind of, I feel like, look at it from like an open-minded sort of perspective. So, and plus they've been through, they're Europe's, way older than we are.
Oh my God!
So everywhere they've had 5 or 6 9/11s.
They've had everything you can imagine
in their history. You know what I'm saying? So and so they're less. It doesn't hurt them as much to be able to go, oh, this person's going to talk about something personal, and it happens to be about a national tragedy. So they can put it aside.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really good in that space in particular. I think it's going to fly really, and then you'll be able to polish it and then come back here and do whatever the fuck you want with it.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally, I've heard nothing but like people come back like feeling like the Hulk.
Well, you can, like, people come back and sell shows. I mean, or it's common over there for them to sell shows in London, because we have a show that we were trying to pitch from the tour. And they were like, you guys come and perform it in Edinburgh next year and you could sell it. And we were like, okay.
That's great. Are you gonna, that's your plan for next year? Next year,
yeah. I'm doing my one-woman show next year, Diary of a Bad Fiancé.
Okay.
But I'm still writing it.
It happens. Yeah,
I'm still a bad fiance, so it's still working out. But I want to figure out how you ended up getting into comedy. Like, what growing up were you up to that kind of led you that way?
You know what? For me, it was more about I wasn't necessarily the best athlete. I wasn't necessarily the smartest. I wasn't the best athlete. I wasn't the smartest. I wasn't the best at anything.
Yeah.
And so I went to Catholic school growing up, and you get a class of 30 people. And like as you grow with those 30 people over 8 years, everyone, not even 8 years, the first 4 years, and I'm seeing it with my kids now, the first 4 years, because they go to Catholic school too.
Oh, shit.
After 4 years, you already know, like, who is the best at baseball? Bam. You point to 2 people. Who's the best basketball player? That guy does it. And so by 4th grade, when you realize you're like, no one's pointing at me yet, like for the best anything yet. Mm-hmm. What's open?
Clown.
So you're like, look, clown. So then a clown is like, so then you go, all right, clown. Let's do clown, right? But then you go, I don't have the parents for clown. Because what comes with clown is a lot of trips to the principal's office, a lot of that bullshit.
And they would have tore
and I think the clown fizzles out. There'll always be a new clown.
Yeah.
But I'm like, the snarky, the snarky sharpshooter can't really keep it to himself guy. That guy.
Yeah.
So that's sort of how I started to navigate, like, 8th grades and into high school. Then it just became a thing where I enjoyed making people laugh. That was sort of like something I did. But I also played sports and stuff and, got along with a lot of different groups of people, smoked cigarettes here and there. So you got along with the
kind
dirtbags.
Kind of how I was, actually.
Yeah. But, yeah, but then, so it's like I had, and then I moved from Catholic school after 9th grade to a public high school. It was sort of a mutual decision I left.
What was that transition like?
Tough because I was like, you know what? I'm really done with just knowing these same group of people. I was almost like I wanted to get to know new people. And the town that I lived in was big. It was on Long Island. It was a big town. And so they had 2 separate high schools.
Yeah.
Both with about 400 kids in each high school, 500 kids. And then that year that I was like going to leave, I felt like leaving my St. Anthony's, the Catholic school, the 2 high schools were combining. So I go, look, if any year is good for me to leave, I'm like, half the people are new to everyone else here. So I might as well go in. I'm new to everyone, but I got some friends. I grew up in the neighborhood. And so that's when I went in. And
you're just expanding your audience right away.
Bam, right away.
Just figuring out if your humor works.
Now I'm like, now I cannot compete athletically. There's no way I can be like the 12th best, 15th best basketball player, the 30th best baseball player, whatever it is, 50th best or whatever. And so I started doing plays. And then once I did a comedy, I got like someone wrote something, Neil Simon wrote something, and then all of a sudden I said it. And I said it the right way, and everyone laughed. I remember the first time being like, ooh, I got them. Like, I looked at them, and then you realize, you're like, don't look, like, stay in who you are and continue on. And so, but that bug of being like, I can get them whenever I want if I just say the funny thing the right way. And then I started, college was when I was like, all right, now I'm going to focus on, this is kind of like in this area of what I feel like I want to do, but I know it's sort of like athletics. It's like going to be.
Did you do theater or did you? Theater. No stand up, nothing like that. Yeah, just theater. But I enjoyed doing, if you had a comedy, like everyone else was like, who's going to who's going to want to take their shirt off and run around? Even in like, when we did a Midsummer Night's Dream, I played bottom. Oh, yeah.
I was like, of course. Yeah, because they were like, who's going to do that? I was like, yeah, I'll do that. So those are the kind of like, even in those things, I still enjoyed comedic roles. So,
yeah.
And then when I got out of college, I was like, you don't get to perform every night. You don't get to do that. But if you were willing to do stand up and do open mics and stuff. And so I started writing stuff down. And my wife, who is then my girlfriend, signed me up for an open mic at the New York Comedy Club.
Oh, shit.
And
that's funny.
I was like, all right, it's, shit or get off the pot time. And I went and did it. It was a 3 minutes in that little side room. Bringer show. You had to bring a couple people.
Yeah.
I brought one. And the guy's like, you get 3 minutes now instead of 5. And you go up third instead of like in the end. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever. I'm like, because I didn't want anyone else to come. I'm like, I'll eat whatever it is.
Yeah, as long as it's mostly strangers.
Yeah, strangers.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'll just yell my water broke if
it's really bad.
If it's going badly. And I was like, all right. I mean, she wasn't pregnant. She didn't even look pregnant, but she'll just yell it and we'll run.
Perfect
all right,
plan.
Great. And so I did it. And then they were like, yeah, come back. You want to come back next week? You know, I guess they just like half the people were just like garbage people. Like, you know, like.
Yeah.
And so.
Do you remember what you talked about on your first set? Do you remember anything?
The gym. You always have a gym bit. Everyone's going to the gym and everyone's grossed out of the gym. So what grosses you out and can you get that across? And look, probably did it, you know, would I do a gym bit now? No, I would not do a gym bit now. But of course, you know, the first thing you do is like, what's going to make people laugh?
Yep.
And so you connect, you make them laugh a little bit. I remember panicking, getting 3 minutes felt long. Until you got off and you're like, wait, all right, I could have, all right, good. You know, there was no recording back then. You didn't record your fucking sets. I see guys now, like, I mean, I record every set now, but, and open micers, they all record their sets, but like, I didn't have the opportunity.
No, even.
There are people out there with their first set recorded, ever.
Which is crazy to me because I didn't get exposed to the fact that people could record something until I was performing at this show in Chicago doing my first 15 minutes. First set that was 15 minutes, and somebody recorded it with like audio that was built into the place. And afterwards, they were like, "We have your recording if you want it." And I was like, "What? That's a what?
Really?
That's a thing?"
Yeah.
And then when I moved to LA, I started hiring this guy to like come to Comedy Store and get my sets.
Yeah.
So I have like a bunch of DVDs of my first year in LA, but before that, I don't have anything.
I love the subset of comedians that always figure out like what's the thing that other comedians are going to need that I'm going to be able. I should figure out how to do. So it's like for a long time it was like, hey, I can film your sets. They had the audio equipment. They could do like a good job. Give you a VHS tape. I remember when I left New York, I left with like 3 copies of a VHS tape of a great set I had that I was going to try to give to some college agents out in Los Angeles.
Yep. In
a
reels.
fucking VHS tape that was like purple. I was like, oh, this shit will stand out. It's a purple. The casing was purple.
Yep.
And so of like a 5-minute set. And I'm like, if I can get a commercial. But then again, I'm thinking to myself, well, what do I do? Like if I got a college agent, what if they, what am I getting? I don't have enough time. So it's like, you know, you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing with this VHS tape, but you just build upon. That's why I had to get to the comedy. I had to go like someplace where I can get up and start to do it a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I remember like, and I feel like I've had this conversation with so many people, but I remember being like a year in and being kind of cocky about the fact that like, yeah, I should be performing at like all these clubs and like sending my DVD to different club bookers and being like, I really want to perform here. And they'd be like, how much time do you have? And I'd be like, I got like a solid 10. I did not, but I didn't. It was like it wasn't a good 10. It was, I probably had like 5 legitimately.
I remember talking to like different, like, you know, because we were at the Comedy Store, all of our, you know, my class was me, Ari Shafir, Steve Simone. There was a lot of other people and stuff, and a lot of other door guys would come in, and they were constantly trying, like, they was like, oh, you got to do new stuff. And I'm like, you know, the 3 minutes you did last week sucked. Like, so I don't know if I'm not saying you shouldn't try new stuff, but like, I'd like to get a good 7 minutes down first.
Right.
Before I'm like constantly trying new stuff.
Yep. Yeah.
I need a place to constantly try new stuff. Okay, great. Well, you should continue to work on the stuff that you're still not working.
Do you remember when you were hired to do your first 10 minutes and how that felt? Do you know where that was?
Yeah, I was in LA already. And this was probably, so I moved in November of 2001. This is probably February or March of 2002. Mm-hmm. My college that I graduated from was like, we have this comedian coming, and if you can get back here, we're not paying for anything, we're not flying you back, but we'll give you $100 to open for him. We know you're doing stand-up. So I go, great, yeah, I'd love to do it. I'll figure out a fucking way to get back there and do it.
Yeah.
So I'm doing sets that night, and I'm with my girlfriend, and I go to Damiano's, the pizza place on Fairfax. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yep, I am.
So I'm on and I'm there, and I'm eating pizza, and all of a sudden I look at the table next to me, and it's Bobby Lee. And that's the comedian that I was supposed to open for. And I tell my
it's hilarious.
I'm just going to say my wife. She was my girlfriend. My wife, we weren't married then, but you know this. So I have to go tell him. I want to tell him. So then I went over and I told him. And Bobby, at the time, I remember this because he'd just gotten Mad TV.
Yeah.
He was on the Tonight Show. And like he was literally like he went from having nothing, being an addict, living in his car, eating out of a dumpster, to getting like $5,000 a week checks.
Yeah.
And so he, to this day, still is one of the most generous. So he would take people to dinner after like shows and stuff and order. I mean, I'm talking Game of Thrones style. So if Bobby felt like crudité, if he felt like a carrot, he'd order a crudité. If he felt like a slice of pizza, he'd order a pie. If he felt like all those things in the meal, he would do all those things. Yes.
That's awesome.
And so I remember him having one. I'd be like, whoa. And he's like, so I talked to him and I remember him being like, oh, that's awesome. Okay, great. I'll see you there. And when I got there, right, this was like a month later. I got there. He shows up. I do the 10 minutes, right? And we talked after, and he goes, you were great. Come. I goes, what are you doing tomorrow? I go, I'm going to go back down. I got my car. I'm going to go down back home tomorrow. He goes, no. He's like, I got 2 other colleges, Cortland and Southern, and they're all like next to each other.
Yeah.
He goes, you're going to come open on the rest of them with me. I'll give you $200 a show.
You were like, fuck.
And I was like, fuck, yeah. I'm like, yeah. So I had my car. He goes, I'm going to fly. He was going to fly from he was going to drive 25 minutes to like Albany to fly to Syracuse. He was going to, I'm like, no, just drive. So I drove him to 3 cities. He paid me. And he goes, where do you live? I go, I live in LA. I saw you at the thing. And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, come to the Comedy Store next week when you get back. And I went there and then, he mentioned my name to the manager, Dave Scott, and they gave me a door guy job that night.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, literally. Like, so that was sort of like meeting him.
That was your gateway.
That was it. Yeah.
So from stand up, how long was it until, let's see, when did the league start? Because it ended in 2015, right? The last season?
2015, yeah.
7 years.
7 years, 7 seasons, yeah. We're actually going, this is the 10th anniversary.
Fuck.
I know.
That's
We're going
crazy.
to Austin for this festival thing in the first week of June for a panel.
So from starting stand up to like your first big, you were on Punk'd.
Yeah, 2003.
Was that your first big kind of gig?
Yeah, that was the one that you were like
that show made so many people, or like gave a lot of people their kind of break into TV.
Yeah, it was like 2 years at the store at that point and being like kicking it around, doing at this point now I was like, I felt good about comedically who I was.
Yep.
And I realized talking to the audience was something I had fun doing. So Mitzi, sure, there's 2 open mics. There was one on Sunday and one on Monday at that time. And she let Ari host the Sunday one and me host the Monday one. And so hosting that for 3 hours, I got good at that. I got good at talking to people. I got good with fucking with people. I got good with audience stuff.
And the natural improv already played into that. So
then when the show Punk'd came out, they sort of had, the show was, no one knew really what it was, but Ashton was a big star and it came out and it just sort of blew up. They had the right people. Justin Timberlake got punked and this guy, Dak Shepard, was funny and everything just sort of worked out. And they realized they had a juggernaut and they needed to like feed it. They had to keep going. And that's not a thing where you can get like, well, let's just wait 8 months. Like they had to keep going quickly. So they had to keep turning the cast over. So like right away while the show was on, they were looking for new people and setting up new punks. So they started looking out at all the different comedy clubs for people and they found me and they brought me in and I went and auditioned for everyone and had a couple times I went back and forth and, then times I didn't hear anything like for a day and then they call me back, come back tomorrow. And it was all improvising with other people. Which is so fun. And then literally I got a call saying like, hey, you got it. We want you to do one tomorrow. We'll pick you up at noon. And you're like, sweet. Didn't tell me who it was, where we were going, what we were doing. And that was it. I punked Tracy Morgan the next day. They picked me up. They're like, you be a tow truck driver. His car got, he's got a brand new car. They always had a plan. So, yeah. Because everyone wanted to be punked. Yeah, so, and not at the same time, but yeah, everyone want like that show. Like if you were going to be like super cool if Ashton picked to punk you. Yeah. So Tracy Morgan got this brand new Jaguar. He was on the Tracy Morgan show, and they were shooting it at CBS Radford, and there was like a restaurant across the street where we set everything up. And basically it was like he pulled it in. BJ Novak from The Office was the valet guy.
Yep. Oh, I remember this episode.
Yeah, and he pulled it in and left it there, and then BJ drove away, and then I came in as a tow truck driver we put the, another Jaguar or a and smashed in the windows and stuff.
Yep.
And put it up on a tow truck, and then they called him out.
How many fucking cars they smashed on that show?
We put Outcast, we put a Maybach through a fucking window on Sunset and had helicopters and shit. So like when you ask like your first job, it was like, I sort of like looked at it like, thank God I didn't know how important all this shit was. Like, yeah. Because if you just started laughing, like, and you were like, this is fucking like super early, like we just spent like $800,000.
Oh, fuck. Even more than that. Like, and what do they do with all the stuff that they ruin afterwards? They like auction it off or something?
I mean, the window. Like,
I would love to take
the window on Sunset. They just put a new window. I mean, obviously they just put a new window in, but like, I mean, there were some that they didn't air.
There was like cars. I remember when they punked Justin Timberlake and they're like smashing guitars and shit. Like when he thought he was getting audited and getting all his stuff taken out of his house.
Goldberg, we blew up a fucking motorcycle.
Yep.
We blew it up.
Fuck. It's crazy to think about how expensive that show was, but like, and cast wise, how long were you on it?
Well, I mean, you didn't really have to. Look, casting was like you didn't really you never felt like a cast. It was like
they had to keep it fresh.
He was very, very nice. He took you to dinner, and the people that were on, it was like, hey, we're all going to go to dinner after this or whatever it was. But it was never a thing like you felt like you were like, oh, okay, I'm a part of this cast, because you knew like after 4 they once they started airing, like they were airing and I was still doing them, right? So they were like, can you shave your head? Yeah, and I was like, yeah,
of course.
Done. Shave my head. They're like, nah, it doesn't work. Can you dye it black? I go, sure. Did it. They sent me to Ashton's dye guy or whatever it was. They dyed it black. Now I look like Eddie Munster. Yeah. So now I'm like, fuck. So I did like 2 more, and they were like, all right, thanks a lot. Great job, everyone. Steve did all the punks he's going to do. And now I'm like, now I'm walking around like fucking Eddie Munster for the next 5 months. My wife's like, you look like a gorilla.
Fuck, with just black tips. As your hair
just like
starts to grow out.
like that. It wasn't a Caesar. It was terrible. I did like 10. Outcast, Missy Elliott, Ashanti, Laura Flynn Boyle. Yes. Yeah, that was a good one too.
Yeah. God, they're all coming back to me because it's been so long.
Yeah, it was the second season basically is the way it worked out. And we did like a commentary for the DVDs, because at that point it was like, you did DVDs for the second season launch or whatever. So
yeah, which is crazy because it wasn't that long ago, but
I know. And then when the show came back, people like, you're on Punk'd, like the next generation. And I'm like, yeah. And they were like, oh my God, what's Bieber like? And I'm like, no, not that. I was the one with Ashton. Yeah. They were like, oh, I was 4 when that one came out.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. 2000. So, and then from there, how did you end up getting the league? What was that?
Well, then it was like after Punk'd, it was like a couple years of pilots and getting a pilot and getting picked up for 13 episodes and then getting quickly fucking canceled. Yeah. Getting a pilot and not getting picked up, a couple of years of that. Right. And then just being like, fuck this. I hate this. I did Mall Cop. That's when I was like, I did Mall Cop. And I was like, oh shit, movies. This is where it's at. Don't worry about getting picked up. This shit's just already getting made. Yeah. And so when I did Mall Cop, after we wrapped, Jeannie McCarthy, who was casting that, she's like, I got this TV show that I'm about to work. It's like improvised about guys who play fantasy football. I know you're a football fan. Would you come in and read for it? And I was like, yeah, all right, sure, no problem. So they had a whole set of auditions where you went in, you improvised. The creators were there, and they had Jeannie had like an improviser in the room that would kind of go back and forth with you. And I read for a role, and I left, and she ran out to the parking lot, and she's like, "They really liked you. Can you read for this other role? They might need you to read for another role." I go, "Yeah, sure. Just let me know." So then 2 days later, they were like, "Yeah, they want you to read for this other role. It's the husband. Can you read for the husband?" I go, yeah, sure, no problem. So I went in and I did a chemistry read with Katie Aselton, who ended up playing Jenny.
Yep.
And they were like, great, no problem. And they were next day and I was going to New York for the summer because I just had my first son. My parents were there, and I wanted to I'd just gotten another pilot that didn't picked up. I was like, fuck this. I'm like, summer's slow. I can just write some stand up. I'm going to rent a house in New York next to my parents. Literally, I rented it next door to my parents. My wife's parents lived like a mile away. We had a 6-month-old. I'm like, we're just going to chill. I'm going to write and have it, for a month. And on the drive to the plane, they called and they're like, they want to offer you the show. And
I feel like that always happens when somebody just dissociates for a minute.
I mean, it's happened to me multiple times.
Where you're just like, I need a break. And then all of a sudden the thing is given to you.
Yeah. And so I just read for this other movie with Drew Barrymore and Justin Long called Going the Distance.
Oh,
and
yeah.
It was coming down to me and this other guy, Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah.
And so my manager repped both of us, and he still does rep both of us. And so I remember my manager being like, I think your choice won, but I know they like Jason a lot too. And the SNL schedule, it was a whole thing back and forth. But It really was like everyone else had signed on to the league. And I'm on day 3 of them being like, do you want to do this show or not? And now I'm like, because if I do it, I pull myself out of the movie, and that's that. And then I'm going, am I a movie star? Because I'm saying to myself, am I a movie star? And for some reason, thank God, I went, just give me and I heard Nick Kroll, and then I looked him up, and I looked up John LaJoie, who was the first person.
Brothers.
And then Mark and Katie. And I was like, you know what? I don't know. These people seem fun. This show seems something fun, and who knows? You know what? It's cable.
Yeah,
it's what's the worst that can happen? And so I decided to do the show, and I spent my little month off in New York and came back in August, and we shot the pilot, and I laughed nonstop, and I thought for sure we're going to be canceled. And then they were like, after we shot the pilot, a week later, they're like, all right, they want us to do 6. Let's go. We start next week. And I was like, they like this thing? And they go, yeah. They go, this is a new thing. They go, cable's the FX people, they just want us to make it.
Yeah.
Just make it the way you want to make it. And that's that. Just it. And they were like, and I was like, they don't care? There's no table reads? I go, no, we don't do table reads. We just got to shoot this fucking thing.
Yeah.
Football starts in a week. We start in a week. We're going to write, shoot, and it's going to be on in 3 weeks.
Fuck.
And literally, we did the first season like that. The first 6 episodes were and I remember being like, because I spent a great month in summer. That month in New York, I ate a lot.
Yeah.
I ate a fucking lot. And when I shot the pilot, if you watch the pilot and then you watch the second episode, I lost 15 pounds. Because I was like, I remember watching and be like, is that John Goodman?
Oh, shit. That's in the pilot?
Being petrified of being like, fuck.
It's crazy though, because at that time, it's just kind of like with anything, just timing is so important, whether it's podcasts or just getting, because it was you guys and Always Sunny, and that was it.
Well, that was it. They needed another show for Always Sunny. That's why they were for us, they were like, look, we've tried a couple other shows. We like these creators. Our creators had a great pedigree. Jeff wrote when he was 24 for Conan.
Yep.
First job at Harvard, and then went over and ran the room with Larry at Seinfeld for the last 4 years, and then started Curb with Larry.
Yep.
So pedigree. His wife is an unbelievable producer. So together they were great. And so they knew that they could produce the show for the money and in the time frame. And they got a great cast of young, superstars.
Yep.
That at a real good rate. So this is our best shot. And, Sonny just wanted another show that was hey, just, run with us. And we did. We love doing it with them. Every year we'd have our premieres together. And, it was that they nurtured us. They helped us. It was great.
And so how was it when you'd get your script at the beginning of any week of shooting?
We didn't work on
because it wasn't a written script.
We worked on outlines, yeah.
Outlines.
So we get an outline for the episode. It's usually about 12 pages. And so you get the outline, and it would be like, scene 1 in the bar, Jenny, Pete, Kevin are there, and then Ruxin walks in and wants to know if there's collusion and why. And,
so you would just have to find your way there.
And so we would sort of figure out, we had there were some funny moments, beat it out within the context of not the breakdown. What was the word I'm just looking for?
Of the outline?
Of the outline, yes. But there weren't, there were no like, she says this, then you say that. None of that. So we just did it. And there was a lot of times where it wasn't great, but conversationally, that's what people really resonated with. That's like the way that we spoke to each other, the way that we kind of, cut each other off and would make fun of each other and go off on tangents.
Yeah.
I mean, the tangents were...
Some of the
you would never write anything like the stuff that Paul Scheer, that there were entire episodes in the later years that were built around tangents that Paul and Jason Mantzoukas came up with.
Yeah. And Paul is so, because
there's nothing you can do to Paul Scheer. There's nothing you can say to him
that will throw him.
Yes.
That's so crazy.
Ever.
I got to work with him on just a couple episodes of Hotwives. I was a guest star on a couple episodes of that, like their second season when they did the Vegas. And just the way that everything's run is just so cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it was just like, I was sitting in the parking lot or whatever you would call this space. It was just a house that they rented to shoot in. And we're sitting on lawn chairs, me and Keegan Michael Key. And he's from the neighboring town of my fiance, and my fiance was on it too. And he just shooting the shit, eating like a banana on a lawn chair.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is so chill. And I didn't expect that because this was years ago, and I had never met, anybody of that kind of caliber on set before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, it's not like a bunch of people acting like they're cooler than you. I was like, everybody's
I
just
kissed
so
Keegan Michael Key.
Did you really?
Yeah.
How was it?
Great. The first season of the league, we had just wrapped, and there was a show called Love Bites.
Oh,
Love Bites. I think that's what the name. It was an NBC hour dramedy about like 3 couples living next to each other in Venice or whatever. Greg Grunberg was in it, and Constance Zimmer was in it. But they had neighbors that lived next door to them, a gay couple played by me and Keegan Michael Key.
Oh, shit.
And,
I gotta find this now.
We did 2 episodes together. And I love him.
Oh, yeah, he's so fun.
When he did that, he's like, I just sold this show to Comedy Central with my partner, Jordan. Fingers crossed.
And it's been crazy even watching Jordan and what the fuck is his brain?
I know.
His brain is phenomenal.
I don't know. Are you a horror person?
No, I mean,
neither. I like this shit freaks me out, and I can't even look at the trailers of Jordan's movies.
I know.
I was like, dude, can you just be funny? I'm so fucking scared of you, bro. I love you, and you're so funny. Like, him and Chelsea are so funny, but god damn, does he have a dark mind.
I know. It's really fascinating. I'm like, where did this come from?
Yeah. I mean, it's brilliant, but I'm like, I love that, like, the horror genre. I know I know it's like thrilling, but I can't. To me, it's like, I want to escape. I feel like this for like 2 hours, that whole white knuckle feeling of like, is just, I'm like, I need like another 2 hours to like calm down.
Yeah. Well, and like, I've always been cool with horrors where they're like slashers or whatever, because I'm like, whatever. People running around in masks trying to murder people, it's not. But like things with people that have a fucked up brain.
Yes.
That
twist
fucks
and
with me, because that's real. There are actually people that are absolutely insane like that.
Yeah.
And
but you know what, though? It's like M. Night Shyamalan, like those movies and stuff. Like, I could watch those movies because I was like, okay. And then, you do that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, bro. Sorry. I didn't pull it away. You do that moment where you're like, I didn't know. Like, when he was the king of like, someone just walks by, you're like, everyone,
Yeah.
Jordan wants to scare you. He does that too, but then he also is like, hey, I'm going to scare them right now.
Yeah.
Boom.
Totally.
And so I'm like, hey, fuck you, Jordan. Like, some of his stuff is like, when they get closer, those weird, like,
oh, yeah,
masks way up close.
Yeah.
Like, fucking frightening.
I know. It's so weird. So before we wrap up, I want to kind of get a little bit of a teaser because I do have quite a few people in Edinburgh that listened.
Oh, great.
So do you want to tease anything about your upcoming one-man show and talk about that a little bit?
It's called Please Forget, a true 9/11 story. Based on, my experiences of what happened with me and the lie that I told and what happens, when something like that occurs and my experience. Basically, it's coming together as to what looks like when your entire world changes in a day. And, there's a little bit on the narrative of like where we've come in 4 years since then and the whys in there as well, and how I've kind of dealing with it and what it meant to me and my family. So for me, it's like it's cathartic. It's sort of putting. It's
trying to put something to rest.
Yeah, I'm not the kind of comedian. I'm not the kind of stand-up that's like, hey, like Pryor was like, hey, I burned my fucking face off trying to do crack, and that was always his style, and that's what everybody loved about him. But for me, I'm just like, here's some experiences that I had, and these are the things that I find funny. But it was never like I never talked about how badly I was as a person, so I needed another avenue to kind of get this out. And for me, I was like, this is the best way to do it, to put it all into one sort of thing over there and go have this be that thing. And so, and I can continue doing my stand up the way I like to do that, and not necessarily the two don't meet, but it's very, the one man show's got a lot of elements of humor in it, but for the most part, it's watching someone struggle.
Yeah.
And wondering what happens now. What do we do with these people that have been sort of not criminally they haven't done anything criminally wrong. They haven't done anything where they need to go to jail, but they're still considered undesirable in public.
Yeah.
And where do we put these people? How big is the penalty box?
Well, and also
who decides who lets you in and who lets you out?
Yeah.
Why are certain people winning awards who are, could be maybe raped people but that's fine, and other people can't do this because
of something that happened else. So long ago or something. Because exactly. I feel like that happens to a lot of people where and I don't know your full story, but I feel like a lot of times people will be caught in this moment and they'll come up with something and then that's just part of their story for like 10 years.
Sure.
And I feel like that's not uncommon in this industry, especially because you're new and you're trying to find something that makes you stick out when people are talking to you. Like you're at a casting and all of a sudden they're like, what have you been through? And you're like, every show wants to find some reason or a story.
Yeah, it's like you ever go to a dinner party and you start to tell a story. Everyone's telling a story, and you have a story about that subject, but it happened to your fiance, right?
Right.
But that the best way to tell the story, instead of having to go like, but then because you don't know, like it's just to put yourself
in that space.
Yep. And so you do that, and it's very easy, and it's the best way to tell the story. And 9 times out of 10, that's harmless and does no ill to anyone.
Yep.
But if you do that in the wrong context at the wrong time, it can be, and it's as easy as that. And to do it is easy. It's easy as a sneeze.
And then you just have to live with that. And
you have about 15 seconds to be able to go, I got to take that back.
Yeah.
Whoops. And then it's gone.
Yeah.
You don't see it anymore. It's like a germ. It's now out there and someone else has it.
Yep. And then all you can do from that point on is just find a way to make, like you're doing, turn the story into something more personal and really tell it from your perspective.
Because it's been 4 years. So you spend a year of going like, I'm so sorry to every single person you meet. And then you spend a year of going, you know what? Pick up your bootstraps and move on. And that's it. And then you spend a year of like, I don't know if anyone likes me anymore. I feel like I've done that and no one is still. And then now it's like, you know what? I'm owning the part. I'm going to talk about the part I own.
Yeah.
Which is the day that everything happened. That part I own.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't feel like I'm profiting off of anything or making a mockery of anything. I'm talking about the part that I own. And so what do you do when you fuck up this big?
Yep.
And how do you ask for forgiveness and how do you stop asking for forgiveness?
Well, and nowadays it's almost like, what part of the spectrum are you on? I feel like people look at every mistake somebody makes and they're like, how bad is that in comparison to this?
I thought you meant ass, but I'm like, I'm probably like borderline slow.
Are you on the spectrum?
Yeah, like I have a very high IQ.
But now there's been so many people that have done really fucked up things that it's like finding where you land on that scale.
Well, exactly. And again, my show, you get 15 minutes. I don't even want to do this. I'm not going to sit there and go, well, this person's this, and what do you think about? I'm just saying, as a general statement, that there is a penalty box that we were putting all these people in, and we don't know who's letting people out. There's no one letting people. There's nowhere to.
There's no timer.
Nothing.
It's just, yeah.
And so, yeah, we don't. I don't want to compare other people, but I'm just again going to your point that. Yes, since once you put someone in, then something else happens.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, oh, okay. Well, then there's that. But then something else happens. But we're all still sort of put in the same box. Yeah.
Well, it'll be cool for people to see that and for you to I feel like something really cool is going to come of that.
Me too. I hope so.
I hope so too. I mean, everybody that has a long career, there's some sort of controversy at some time.
Sure.
So, for what it is, to be able to turn that into more art and make it personal. And,
yeah, I think it's more than just a stand-up bit.
100%.
So that's why I feel like it's owed a little bit more than that.
And I think that's a big thing that coming from an improv background and sketch background teaches you too, because that's how my brain kind of works coming out of Second City. There's some things that I categorize as just like dinner party stories. I'm like, these are really fun stories, but it just has to be the right situation to tell them.
Yeah.
And then I put some stories into stand-up form. And then some stories just, I have to figure out what else to do with them. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's more fun that way because then you have like endless types of art you can make, or not art if that's what you choose.
You'll have couch stories too someday.
Couch stories
Plenty
for TV
of couch
shows. Stories. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The next podcast that I'm planning to start is called Beers with Old People.
All right.
And because my favorite thing is to sit down and like chat with old people while drinking.
Nice.
And so that'll be my couch stories.
That's good. Yeah.
So besides Edinburgh, what do you have coming up that you're excited about?
I have a podcast on the All Things Comedy Network called What's the Odds, where we talk about sports and pop culture, and usually someone says something that they think they know more about the other person, and they end up betting on it with them. So,
cool.
Yeah, we bet on the royal baby last week, which we all fucking were wrong about that.
Nice.
My wife was like, she's too high. We have a Game of Thrones death pool happening right now.
Perfect.
NBA playoffs and all that stuff. So we're live every Wednesday, 2 p.m. on the All Things Comedy Facebook page.
And any touring coming up?
Yes, this weekend I'm in Cleveland because this is coming out tomorrow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cleveland this weekend at Hilarities. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And tickets are on my website. And where else am I going? Oh, then Austin for the 10th anniversary of the league.
Oh,
panel. Yeah.
So what's happening with that? It's a live panel?
It's a live panel. Austin at the Austin Television Festival. I don't know I don't know. I mean, I'm sure tickets are available.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's at a theater or something like that. So
fuck yeah, that'll be so fun.
Yeah, it's all of us getting together. 10 years since we shot the pilot.
Broing
out. Which was like 10 years ago now, basically.
That's so crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Time.
I know. It's nuts.
Time is good. And where can people find you on social media?
At Steve Rannazzisi on Instagram. And I am on Twitter, but January 2nd, I got locked out of my password. And then I'm in a vicious cycle where I cannot get the password. I need a password to get a password.
Oh, fuck.
Literally, so I have not tweeted or been on Twitter since January 2nd, although I have like 100 and something thousand followers. So but I'm there. That it is me with the check mark. But don't write like you.
Don't expect a reply.
Yeah, don't say like, "Hey, I'm hurt. I need to go to the hospital," because you're not going to get a reply. Instagram is where I usually.
Can somebody on Twitter please help this man out?
Good luck.
And you can find me at MPH Comedy on all the stuff, at Future Role Model on Instagram, or at Role Model Pod on Twitter. Any closing remarks?
No, I mean, live long and prosper, I guess.
Perfect. All right, peace.